Hello, and a warm welcome to this United Nations University program. I am Neela Malwani.
And I'm Ojede. Thank you for joining us today. We are pleased to have with us Ambassador Heller to speak about the United Nations Security Council. Claude Heller is currently the Mexican ambassador to Japan and was a representative member of the United Nations from 2007 to 2011. Prior to this position, he served as a permanent representative to the OECD and the Organization of American States, as well as ambassador to various countries, including Cuba, France, and Switzerland. During Mexico's tenure in the UN Security Council, Ambassador Heller chaired the Council in April 2009, as well as in June 2010. He also chaired various subcommittees, including the Working Group on Children in Armed Conflict. In addition, Claude Heller played a key role in the first evaluation of the UN Peacebuilding Commission in 2009. Ambassador Heller, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to talk with you.
We would like to start off by hearing more about your experiences as Mexican ambassador to the OECD, the Organization of American States, and the UN Security Council. Could you share your view regarding the role of politics in relation to the effectiveness of decision-making processes within each of these bodies?
I think the point of departure is the different nature of the different organizations. The OECD, the OAS, or the UN, each one of them has its own charter, its own purposes, principles, and objectives. No? The Security Council, I think, is a different case because it's an organ of the United Nations. But I would say that in some cases, like the OECD, but also of the Organization of American States, the trend is to try to get the decisions by consensus. No? It's the case very clearly of the OECD, where there is not a procedure vote. No? In the case of the Security Council, of course, it's a very different one because there are working methods and procedures that are established by the Charter and decisions that require a vote by the parties when consensus is not possible. No? I think that when these organizations are sometimes criticized, it's not only the organizations that itself, because the organizations exist by the political will of member states. No? So they are not entities, abstract entities in the international scene. So we have to see that there is always the concern how to have a more effective decision-making process.
Thank you. We would now like to touch on a topic that you covered during your lecture at UNU 2 weeks ago. You spoke about Mexico's previous experience with the UN and Mexico's decision to engage more actively with the United Nations General Assembly and ECOSOC in order to counterbalance the Security Council and the use of the veto. To what extent do you think Mexico's decision affected its influence in the UN and in the international arena?
I think it's important to say that Mexico was, in 1946, a member of the Security Council when the organizations really started up. And the experience was not a very positive one, taking into account the Cold War, and it was very clear that the organization will be blocked in many decisions, taking into account the divisions that exist between the great powers. So Mexico decides not to be a member, a non-permanent member of the Security Council for many years. It was really until 1980, that 34 years after that Mexico came back for the second time to the Security Council. Mexico decided to play a very active role in the different, the other main principal organs of the UN, especially at the General Assembly. Not in order to counterbalance the Security Council, but expecting that the majority of countries that are members of the General Assembly could play a very positive role. We have to remind that the General Assembly has also authority in issues linked to the maintenance of international peace and security. No? So Mexico was very active since 1946 in the General Assembly, in the COSOC, in the different bodies of the UN. And that's why Mexico had the possibility to have some kind of influence in the international politics, taking into account the Mexican contribution to international law, to the law of the sea, nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, political peaceful settlement of disputes, so in many fields. So there is not the consequences of not being at the Security Council. But in 1980, Mexico took the decision, taking into account the international context, that it was time to be again a member of the Security Council.
With regard to the legitimacy and effectiveness of the United Nations Security Council, you mentioned that during Mexico's tenure in the Council, Mexico played a major role in the daily task of the Security Council, such as the first review process of the UN Peacebuilding Commission. Could you tell us more about your experience with the review process and how these recommendations have been implemented, if at all?
We have to remind that in the 2005 summit of the UN, of the heads of states and governments, in the final documents there were new decisions that were taken in some fields. One of these decision was the creation of the Peacebuilding Commission. A Peacebuilding Commission with the idea that when you have cases of conflict cases that are over, peace is not assured. You have to go on, you have to support these processes. That's why this commission was created. But it was created in a very special manner, taking into account that it's a new body, but that is linked to the General Assembly, that is linked at the same time in some way to the Security Council. We have to remember that the 5 permanent members of the Security Council are also permanent members of the Peacebuilding Commission. So 5 years after, in 2010, there was, because it was the resolution that created this Peacebuilding Commission, there was a review process of how the Peacebuilding Commission was working. So I was asked as member of the Security Council to act on behalf of the Security Council in this review process. And South Africa and Ireland were also facilitators for the General Assembly. And the idea was to review and make some recommendations. I would say that in 2013, the Peacebuilding Commission has not already achieved all its goals, in terms that it's a new, relatively new body that has to consolidate its own existence in the UN system. The Peacebuilding Commission function on with the country selections. We have 6 cases that are on the agenda of the Peacebuilding Commission. Is the configuration country approach, where all of them are African states. It's the case of Burundi, it's the case of Liberia, the Republic of Central Africa, Guinea-Bissau, and Guinea. No? And if you look to the news, you follow all these cases, you still can appreciate that there are still instability in several of these cases, and at the same time that the resources needed to support the build-up process have not yet, in all cases, mobilized. No? So it's a process that is working, but it has to consolidate its work.
Thank you. You also spoke about a variety of ways through which the United Nations Security Council could be reformed. Could you tell us what aspects of the Council are most important to reform in order for the body to stay relevant?
I think the main concern has been that the Security Council composition was decided after the Second World War. And I think that there is the main appreciation in the General Assembly, in the international community, that the Security Council has to be renovated in order to represent more the political reality of our time. No? Nevertheless, we know very well that there are imbalances that are already existing in the Charter. The fact that you have right now 15 members, but that 5 members have the veto power, it changed a lot in the appreciation of how the Security Council could work. In all the discussions that have taken place for more than 20 years at the UN, several issues have been identified about the possible reform. In first time, enlargement of the organization, of the Security Council as the main organ in charge of the maintenance of international peace and security. So the discussion has centered on new members. And well, how many new members? This enlargement should include new permanent members or new permanent members and non-permanent members, or exclusively non-permanent members. So in this issue, I think that there is a division that is prevalent in all the regions, all of the regional groups at the UN. Second place, working methods. Working methods are also one of the issues that there is a lot of discussion. The right of veto is also a very sensitive issue. Regional representations, taking into account that you have in several regions, very important, in the case of Europe, you have the European Union that should act in representation of all its members. No? So on these different aspects of possible reform, the positions are divergent among the member states. Mexico, we have defended the idea that there should be the new non-permanent members. Enlargement should be concentrate on this for 2 reasons. We think that the Security Council should be more transparent, and the principle of accountability is very important. For Mexico, our position is that we cannot give a blank check to any country in order to become a new permanent member without any kind of accountability. What we think would be a very positive manner to approach this issue would be to have re-election at the Security Council. This could be an option to have re-elections. By experience, I think that 2 years is a too short time, but maybe if you have 2 periods or even 3 periods, this could be a possibility. The other possibility also could be to have mandates more than 2 years also. No? I think at the end, I think that these ideas could be the basis for a compromise solution.
Looking forward, if the number of permanent members of the Security Council were to increase, how do you think the Latin American region should position itself, and which Latin American countries do you think should seek permanent membership?
Well, I think it's too early to give a concrete answer to these questions. In first place, because there is no decision yet that has been taken. And the Latin American countries are very divided on this issue. There is a country, this is the case of Brazil, that for many years he's a strong candidate to become a permanent member. Or at least it has this aspiration, but others in Latin America, we think in the line of Mexico, like Argentina, Colombia, Costa Rica, among other countries, we think that we should be very cautious about this reform process. In the line of what I have mentioned, the possibilities of re-elections, extended mandates, and this. Nevertheless, if the majority of the General Assembly, more than 2/3 of the General Assembly, and with all the support of the 5 permanent members that is required by the Charter, decided that new permanent members will be created, this will start a new discussion among Latin American countries. But that's not the case for the time being.
Ambassador Heller, thank you for being with us today and sharing your insights with us at United Nations University in Tokyo.
Thank you. Thank you very much.